I'd like to call our regular meeting to order for Chambersburg Area School Board Board of Directors, Tuesday, June 2nd. We did not meet in executive session prior to. We had a public session prior to. We did Pledge of Allegiance and moment of silence previously, so we're going to move right to 2.03, approval to adopt the June 2nd, 2026 agenda. Motion and second, please.
Second.
Motion by Mr. Haydick, second by Mrs. Gauss. Questions, discussions, additions, deletions to the proposed agenda? Hearing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Ayes have it and so moved. Item 2.04, before I ask the question, so for nominations, it will take a nomination. We will not need a second, just like when we're doing committee assignments and board leadership and whatnot. So I'd like to open up the floor for board directors for nominee for Region 5 Board of Director to fill the vacancy of Ms. Harbaugh.
I'd like to nominate Mr. William Lenartz.
Okay. Any other nominations?
I'd like to nominate Mr. Michael Borean.
Okay. And since both gentlemen were here an hour ago, I assume you're still interested. We didn't scare you away. Okay. Motion to close nominations, please.
Move to close.
Motion by Mr. McKee. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? Ayes have it and so move. So now we'll go to item 2.05. I'll ask Mrs. Stauffer to go through a roll call vote. And when she calls your name, just state or announce which candidate you prefer, and that will be our vote. Following our vote, our notary is here, and she will swear in our new school board member. We'll take a little pause while that happens, and then we'll get down to business. So, Mrs. Stauffer, roll call, please.
Okay.
Do we have any discussion on this? Or no? Either way is fine, but I don't know how we're supposed to do it.
Go for it. You know my rule. If you want to
I was
talk,
gonna
I'll let
say,
you
I
all
think both
talk
of
as long
them-
as you want.
I was going to say, I think both
Yep.
candidates bring some strengths to the team, so.
I concur.
I also concur, and I think it's wonderful that we have two highly qualified people who are interested in our school district and interested in serving on our board. Sometimes that's not the case, so it makes it really difficult for those of us sitting here that have to vote on this, and especially because they're both quality individuals. So whoever is not seated on the board, we want to make sure you understand that we really care that you came in here tonight.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Raber. Good suggestion. Mrs. Stauffer, roll call, please.
Dr. Diller,
William Lenhartz.
Ms. Gogler,
William Lenartz.
Ms. Gauss,
Michael Borean.
Mr. Hayda, Mr. McKee,
Bill Lenartz.
Mr. Norcross,
Mr. Lenartz?
Mr. Piper,
William Lenartz.
and Mr. Raber.
Dr. Borean?
Motion is, for Mr. Lenartz is 5-3.
Again, thank you, Mr. Borean, and thank you, Mr. Lenartz. We appreciate your interest and your support, continued support for Chambersburg School District and the community.
Just comment, though, that in a year and a half or so, this seat will be ready for a permanent member, and it's another opportunity for both of you or someone else to come up and be, interested in trying to get the seat. So thank you both.
Yes, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. I thought you were talking about your seat for a minute there. Like, wait a minute.
Katie behind her, she's our notary, and she's gonna do the oath of office out in the hallway or in the room next door. If you wanna bring your presentation. Feel like I'm interviewing for my job.
Well, it makes me smile that, before we hired you, I got criticized for the process, and now they love you, so I guess, maybe history will repeat itself.
Sure.
A lot of decisions. We gotta start selling some real estate. That should be a priority.
And small print. That's about as much as I can do that. Yeah.
What's that?
Yeah, I can clear that first. Yeah, like, my strength is far away.
I don't know. The world is upside down right now.
I feel like we did this in here. I feel like we usually do this in here. The notary.
Yeah, I usually like this one.
Yeah, why not?
Has to be solemn when you're talking about money.
Why are we doing the swearing in here?
There's no reason.
Yeah.
Just a split in time.
Fair. I think we've usually done it in here.
It doesn't matter. I mean, she swore herself in the technology office because you couldn't attend the meetings, so that you're allowed to, it's just as long as you get notarized.
Yeah, yeah. From a legal standpoint.
Yeah, it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter. It's the
Right.
public, when you win an election, it's more of a,
So you remembered that I went to the technology department and got sworn in?
yep.
You missed a meeting or
Well, I was cruising. I think I was cruising.
Like Kurt had to get sworn in as a commissioned
So I
officer.
went
He
to
had to
the
go to the
technology
judge.
office and they
He
swore
went
me
to
in.
one judge. It was the wrong one, so he'd go back again. In his office, nobody's there watching. I had to go in front of the courthouse, and the new courthouse was gorgeous, but it's intimidating. Yeah, that courthouse is intimidating.
Yeah, it's, I've been there too, it's nice.
It's nice and intimidating. I'm like, I don't want to be in here.
Now, whether the same United States, I'm not sure, but it's northern, northern vet, maybe northern Bedford. But then somehow someone challenged on the place.
What age is your kids now? I kind of lost track of them. How much?
That's
why she asked. Well, okay, so 15 is going into what's
Yeah,
happening.
and they may have another kid, that amazes me how they can.
Not when it's
miss, you know,
Okay, so we'll have, one of our grandsons is going into fifth
well, they want to stay.
and third, you said.
Yeah.
There's four of them. That's great.
Now, who did the
Oh, it's
girls?
wonderful.
We're having a blast.
Oh, that is
We took our grandson last night to the Fayetteville Carnival when we had last weekend. It was so much fun. We played bingo.
What was your favorite food?
Oh, we just got a cheeseburger and fries. That's why we need chambers.
All right, well, welcome, Mr. Leonards. Thank you for coming back. We didn't scare you off again, so that's good.
Absolutely.
Back in session, continue on with our agenda. Item 3.01, building project logistics and funding. This is going to be a dual presentation by Mr. Bigger and Mrs. Stauffer. And then we'll open it up to board discussions, comments. Chris has a couple questions, and I don't know if that's going to be in this part or after.
Towards the end.
Towards the end of it. Okay.
Thank you, everyone. This is not, other than Bill, this is not new information to you. It's packaged and repackaged multiple ways, from architects to John Fry at PFM and Tammy and myself and Friday Folders. So not a lot of new information, but we're trying to get to a culminating point where we have some strategic decisions to make. And I'm not a big analogy person with sports, but I'm going to use one. It doesn't matter what event it is. It can be a golf outing. It can be a baseball game. You know, you start with a plan, and then it rains, and you have delays. And you may do really well in the beginning of your golf round or event, and then at the end, you're not playing very well. This process has a lot of variables to it. And when we present an update, it's as of that month. Lots of influences help us make decisions or not make decisions, whether it's the schedule of the projects themselves, the cost of fuel, whether it is a variable that pops up because we're on a new site at Green Village, or an old site and it needs a new approval, new codes. I could go on and on and on about the variability. So what you're getting tonight is the best information we have as of June of 2026. I felt it was important you hear this from me. It is the team of 10 making this final decision as we get closer to go time. And it is a collective decision. So we want to make sure everyone has the best information, the way you need to understand it, the best way you can have it. So don't feel that the presentation tonight is over. It is the beginning. I do have a recommendation. We have a recommendation, and we are not 100% tied to it. There are variations to it. But I've always felt in leadership, I need to start with a recommendation for you. So you can criticize it, change it, agree with it, or adjust it. But if someone doesn't make a motion or make a recommendation, we stall. So I felt I needed to put us out there. And we as a team did spend a lot of time on the premise of this presentation. So I want to start off with, this is a 50-year look. While it might feel like there's short-term pain, I really want you to think 50 years down the road. If you look at Chambersburg's history, every 30 or 40 years, there's a major change. Whether it was the consolidation in the 60s, to the reduction in elementary schools later on, to major changes in the early 2000s. It seems to be that every 30 to 40 year cycle, there's a major adjustment, generally to facilities and to educational programming. And so we're in that window. Whether it happens all at the same time or we delay parts of the project, that's up to the team's decision. But we're in that window of time where it's up to us to make some major decisions. So we're focused on strategic realignment, educational modernization, and fiscal optimization, mainly because of the influx of state money. So next slide here. I want to start with the end in mind. So the analysis has taken us from 17 buildings to 13 to deliver an optimal building educational design that serves all students, just not some, because we do have some struggles. But we also protect the local taxpayers by using operational savings and the historic state funding, so that we can have one Trojan community in the end. That's been renounding from this board when we started talking about our struggles, to rally around one Trojan community starting in 4th grade. We were looking for opportunities to bring us together, and I think we found a whole bunch of opportunities to bring this community under one Trojan community with one graduation in the end and one identity. This is not, I'm going to read to you, and thank goodness I won't. The only purpose on this slide is to show you that for 2.5 years we've been doing this work. Nothing more than that, but you can highlight every presentation the board has seen, the public, multiple times. No one should really not know we're doing something unless they haven't read anything. And so that's all this slide is for. It's a 2.5-year process so far to date, and we're not done. But we've done a lot of work to get to this point. So this one, I'm re-highlighting that we are closing schools or shuttering schools or repurposing them. And our grade configuration, we debated variations of this, but we ended with K-3 primary, 4-6 intermediate, 1 7-8 school, and then our 1.5 high schools or 1 Trojan Community High School at the end. The reason I brought this slide up in addition to that is you already made a strategic decision as a board. We did. The cost of a renovation of a middle school was so close to a new one, it wasn't worth throwing bad money into an old, or good money into an old building. So we decided to make a new middle school, which is that sunken cost trap. We could have easily renovated that, not changed programming, made it look better, made the HVAC better. You wouldn't have noticed much. And so this is a strategic change from our typical past when we typically renovate and add on. And so I wanted to highlight that decision's already been made to move towards a new middle school prior to the final configuration. So we're going to talk a little bit about adequacy here. So Tammy's going to take adequacy and walk you through a little bit of history and rationale.
So if you go back to the very busy slide that started in 2024, that was also kind of a historical shift for school districts. The 24-25 fiscal year was the first year that we received adequacy funding. We not only received adequacy funding, but we received some additional money into some other state subsidies. So we collectively had about $8 million more in state revenue coming in the 24-25 fiscal year. What we saw was a lot of business managers were like, oh yeah, this is never going to last because it's just not historically what happens with the states. They were like, yeah, we're never going to get to the target, which for Chambersburg was $52 million that we should be receiving annually, additionally from the state from where we were in 23-24. Jump forward now almost 3 years, and surprisingly, the state has come through. In 24-25, we received $5 million in adequacy funding. In 25-26, we received an additional $5 million, and we've been promised an additional $5 million in 26-27. So, you know, quick math, that's about $15 million, a little bit more than that because it's not quite $5 million, but $15 million more than what we were receiving in 23-24. What we saw before adequacy came out was, on average, the district would receive about $1.5 million annually in additional state revenue. So you can see there's been a significant shift in how the state is distributing money out to districts, and it had all to do with the landmark court case, which ruled that the state was not adequately funding school districts equally across the state of Pennsylvania.
And what we won't know about that historical case is when is enough's enough. So we're 3 years in, so far so good, but I can't project for you further out than what we receive. Go ahead.
Okay. So again, you know, this is looking at how we would see things prior to the adequacy and what we are seeing now for the last going on 3 years. I do want to point out, as I've said before, we would not be talking about these projects in the way that we've been talking about them for the last 2.5 years if we had not received adequacy money. There was just really not an easy way to grow the debt service to the level that we will need to grow it with just local revenue. So the state shifting the way that they have, what we've seen is the basic ed funding is kind of flatlined. We're not getting a lot more into that formula, and I'm okay with that. If you're going to continue to give me $5 million into Ready to Learn or the adequacy funding, that's good for us. Special ed, again, it is relatively flat, and we're not seeing a lot of additional monies coming into that. And again, this is all a shift since 24-25.
And we can highlight in the orangish yellow bottom, that's about 360 some school districts receive that. There are many school districts that receive no adequacy money. The formula number used is around $14,000 per child is the adequacy number. And if you are spending less than $14,000 per child, that's what we're getting in gap difference. So when they say gap, it's the gap between the determined per student cost of around $14,120 and what we spend. So across the state, those spending less are getting adequacy. Those spending equal to or more are getting nothing. And that's the formula number they use. This is where the struggle for long-term adequacy is starting to creep in. So 2 things I want to point out. Because we are an adequacy district, we cannot exceed Act 1 for any reason. So if we wanted to go above the Act 1 index, we cannot. Before you could, for special reasons. We cannot because we're receiving that. The second is the state's put themselves in a difficult position for the last 3 years. They have given us adequacy while they're in a $6 billion structural deficit. So the state cannot continue to fund us to the level unless they intervene at the state level. And so that's the real crux in why we can't project out adequacy. Nice to have, we hope to get it, but we can't guarantee it in our decision making, which makes this a little more challenging for us. The 3 items in the middle are the cost drivers for most schools across the state, and we call this cost to carry. Typical, if you raise taxes 2% or receive revenue, most of those 3 items would go up and eat up the cost of your new revenue. You can't control special ed at this point. That's federally and state directed. Healthcare, we did and have been trying to make some changes in healthcare, so we're hoping to see some changes there. And we saw some cyber charter reform last year that did help out. So these are the biggest cost drivers though. So as these go up and the cost to carry continue to be the same, that's a struggle. If our cost to carry comes down, that's really helpful for us. So that's where you continue to say cost of doing business. That's the cost of doing business, and we can't control some of those. The one we can, and we're trying our hardest on the healthcare side. This one came from a PASBO presentation. I thought it really highlighted our risk, but also our future projections. So as Tammy was describing, prior to 21-22, you see those small little charts or bars that go up. That was the 1.5 million on average you would get, whether it's a BEF, a special ed, a ready to learn, or a level up. That was the norm pre-COVID. COVID then hits in 21-22, 22-23, we get ESSER's money through 23-24. Then the next 3 years is adequacy in 24-25, 25-26, 26-27. I added to, this is Mr. Schramm's chart at PASBO, well-known finance person who we all revere as a numbers person. But the real question is, what's going to happen moving forward? I think the rational and reasonable thing to consider is we're going to stay at the historical past averages. And that's how we're going to make decisions. So we're going to assume maybe we get 1.5 million moving forward. If we get adequacy on top of that, great. But based on the state money and based on the historical dollars, we cannot see, and no one is predicting sustainable high levels of funding like we've saw in the last 5 years. Making sense? So projecting out, we're going to use that light blue arrow of the 1.5 million moving forward, that we're going to get something from the state. It's just a matter of how much. So everyone's trying to project and predict how much we will get as an adequacy school. I think this is a really good history lesson of state funding, which runs about a little less than 40% of our budget. So we are reliant on our budget from the state for continued funding. But this is a good history lesson. Pretty adequate, or not adequate, pretty low in the beginning, and then it ramped up and it just cannot continue. So our projects in summary format, instead of giving you the ranges, I just picked the middle as current times of June 6th. So what are the mid-range costs, the median value of the projects for all 3 of them across the board, plus the construction management services towards the bottom. So you can see the middle school came in at 124, intermediate school, these are not new numbers to you, 139, Green Village at 37 for total cost right around 300 if we were to fund everything, plus construction management services. So good news, we are hearing from the architects that large projects throughout the state are coming in under budget. Smaller projects are coming in a little bit above budget. So it seems to me economy of scale is a good thing right now. I hope that maintains itself through the fall when we go to bid in our time frame, December, January. All right, Tammy, this really complicated slide is you, so I will help a little bit.
Oh, great, okay. So, yeah, so what this slide is showing, and of course, you know, to get to the debt service level that we are looking at, if we would finance the 3 projects, or even if we would finance 2 first and then another one, we would be in the ballpark of about $32 million of debt service annually. So in order for us to be able to afford projects, Danette and I, my right hand back here, we have to get that in as a line item in the budget so that it's reoccurring every year. And it is literally one of the first things that we budget when we go to prepare our budget, is we put that debt service in there. Because it's going to get paid one way or the other, and we have to get it in. So where we are right now, as we will move through the agenda, the next few items will be approving, you will be approving the 26-27 budget. Our current level of debt service is around $13.7 million. That's in the 26-27 year. What we have been doing the last few years is super funding the debt service and building up a debt service fund. And we've been able to do that for a couple of reasons. One, again, going back to the adequacy. While we cannot use adequacy money to pay for debt service, we've been able to offset other operating expenditures and reallocate that money to the debt service fund. So we've been able to start to build that up. In the 26-27 budget, we actually have $22.6 million in as a line item for reoccurring debt. In order to get to the $32 million, over the next 3 years after the 26-27 budget, we're going to have to commit to add an additional $3 million to the debt service line to get to that $32 million number. The good news in all this is that we have a period of risk, as Chris has indicated on there, we have the calculated risk in window 1, which is we got to build another $9 million into the debt service budget line. And then we have the window of number 2, which is basically that period of time where our debt service is going to continue to run along about $32 million until it starts to drop off in 2037. That's about the time that the high school debt comes off the books, so to speak. You all know that the new school we have over there, right? We still like to call it the new school. During that period, and I don't know if it's on this slide or if it's on the next one, we also have other competing capital needs. As you heard back in the fall, Mr. Varner presented the capital improvement plan. I think for the next 10 to 12 years, we need about $36 million. Currently in the cap reserve, we have about $16 million. And that's, honestly, I'm happy with that, believe it or not, because when I took this job in 2018, there was $900,000 in there. So it kept me up at night wondering how we were going to maintain all these facilities with about $900,000 in the cap reserve. You want to add anything there?
Yeah, the premise of this slide is what's the level of risk that we're willing to take to move forward with decision making, and how do we mitigate the risks in the windows? And I think that's most important for you to understand. We're only presenting the information we know as of today, and we can start projecting forward. It's why that state revenue slide was so important. We can project a little moving forward, but we cannot until we know more, and we'll know more next February and March when a governor is selected and they present their budget, if adequacy is in there or not. And so we can only project for you, so we have calculated risks that we're willing to take, and you have to be comfortable with that, and we have to be comfortable with that. So let me highlight the 2 risk windows. So how do we engineer down the risk so that we feel more comfortable with that? And I'm going to assume that the state resources are minimized to the historical averages. I'm going to make that assumption. It's a conservative approach. If our health care, and we are very excited that we did only have a 4% increase this past year, that's historically low for us. So that's helpful. If that stays true, and we are reducing our liability of healthcare costs by $2 million, that's a big step. If you remember Tammy's 3-year budget, it added $2 million per year each year for the next 3 years in the 3-year budget. If we can cost avoid that increase, that can be reapplied to and reduces our risk. Following the logic there on the reducing risk. The second one would be our local economic factors. Does our earned income tax, our local development of manufacturing and plants and housing continue, and does our employment remain at historically low unemployment levels? If those continue to remain strong, that reduces our risk. We can make program changes and adjustments if need to help mitigate the risk. We can make our adjustments. There's always room in most budgets to make some of those adjustments. And we can also utilize some of our cash built up in debt service to reduce the full borrow. The scenario Tammy showed you was to borrow the full amount, assuming no cash is being applied to the project. We can reduce the risk of 9 million to a lower number if we were to use cash on the project. And the last one is the enrollment and consolidation savings. So this past year, we saw a 100 student decrease in enrollment. That's very different from the previous 30 years, basically. COVID was the only other time we had a dip. This was our second time right now. So if enrollment stays steady and declines, that helps through attritional savings. If enrollment goes up, kindergarten's up, and we have to hire 4 teachers, that certainly doesn't help our budget. The consolidation savings happen slowly. We've already received some of them and done some of them on our end, but all of it will not come to fruition until the projects are done. But over time, we are able to get those consolidation savings. But those consolidation savings can go away real quickly if enrollment spikes. So on the bottom chart in the fine print, the worst case scenario is if enrollment goes up, the economy tanks, and the state gives us no money. So hopefully those 3 things do not happen, because if we do, then we're down to 1 project, not 2 big projects. So that's risk window 1, which is the first 4 years of that risk window Tammy showed. The second risk window is we don't want to leave existing buildings we plan to use to fall apart. So Matt presented to you a 12-year plan, and I think Matt's here, Matt Varner, yep, in 2025, and it was about a $36 million plan, and we have $16 million currently in that budget. So if we can find a way to ramp up those capital projects to guarantee during the second window, when we've maxed our borrowing or gotten pretty close to maxing our borrowing, we don't lose sight of the existing buildings. That's the second risk window, because I've seen schools spend it all and then they let the other buildings, and then you're in the same problem you were started 20 years from now. So you don't want to repeat that cycle. So the current timelines on a side-by-side comparison of the 2 architects for our projects are very similar. And so both of them would be ready to go out to bid in November. We would go to bid and solicit in December and January, February on the other project. And then we would award bids in January for the Green Village campus and in March for the middle school campus. I said from day one that it's the right plan, it's just how fast we can do the plan. So we're staying, at this point, we're continuing the thought process that we can do the projects, and they open in the fall of '29. However, this is where it gets complicated. So it's fun saying yes, and it's a little harder saying how are we going to get this done. So I am going to look to my colleagues behind me to the right and to the left a little bit to chime in. This is where it's going to be a little more interactive. We spent a half a day discussing, can we actually build them all simultaneously on the logistics side? Just envision this. In the summer of '29, every kindergarten, for the most part, through 8th grade teacher is moving. We are redistricting the entire elementary division, and we are messing with transportation, timelines, and locations and pickups and where you ride. 3 big ticket items. So we started with that question, and we ran a matrix. So what is the cost of doing all the projects at the same time? What is the cost of delaying a project? Because delaying a project costs you 3% in cost escalation. So on 130 million, delaying the project costs you 3 more million, depending on the market. And so we ran through this analysis. So I want to pause here. We looked at cost, logistics, public impact, staff change, disruption, and then educational enhancement. So I want to pause here and just do a little interaction with us on questions you might have about the logistics and this chart. And then you're not deciding on anything, but at least understanding a little bit of our struggle, and then we'll get to the recommendation. So what questions or thoughts would you have on this type of chart?
I'll maybe start them, Chris.
Yeah.
Or that you and I had this conversation several times. You know, I've always thought a bit of a staggered opening was best.
Mm-hmm.
And then when you mentioned logistics, that was sort of really sealed the deal.
Mm-hmm.
Really sealed the deal for me. And I think if you go with a staggered opening, you know, obviously Green Village would be the first one because that is where we see savings from synergies, so we can start recognizing savings sooner with the Green Village opening first.
Let me clarify. There is a delaying for a year to even do the project, or a delayed opening, maybe by 6 months. Both are options. So if we did all the projects and delayed one of them, more likely the middle school, to open in January, that's an easier pill to swallow than trying to do it all in August. The other is a delay for an entire year of building the project, which means one would open in the fall of '29, assuming the weather's perfect and we have no construction problems. One would open in the fall of '29, one would open in the fall of 2030.
I like the word staggered versus delay.
Yeah, yeah.
So my question would be, I'm thinking about students and families and how they react to the delay opening. So who's going to handle this better? The younger kids or the kids going into the middle school? Or like, what's the impact going to be on that? Because that's where the waters get really muddied in terms of community support, people having their hair on fire about this, and how it impacts the learning environment.
Question for the group. Anybody want to chime in from colleagues?
When we met a couple weeks ago for that half a day, we talked about delaying for the year or a staggered opening of the summer and then a January. Elementary students, that would mean they would change teachers, they would change schools, they would change friends in the middle of a year. That is not good for the elementary students, and frankly, it's probably not good for the older students as well. So that's another piece to think about as well. But if you delay from one summer to the next summer, you're starting fresh and you're not disrupting the whole educational environment in all of the schools, because we're pulling 4th and 5th grade out. We're redistricting and removing many, many students and many teachers.
One of the thoughts.
Hold on,
Do you have a follow-up?
let's
I'm
finish the
ahead,
responses.
I'm
Go
sorry.
ahead.
I think it's important to point out that a lot of discussion has already started on possibilities of, and there are two key words there, a delay of a project completely, sends you down one logistics path and planning for communication, not just with home, but with staff and with students and things and workforce and manpower to have that planned, organized, and communicated out with plenty of time. Those are all things that we've considered already up to this stage. Delay versus staggered opening is a really key piece here. Moving forward, if you see the driving force behind all of this in that far right column is that educational enhancement. Really key piece for you to keep in mind that everyone benefits from that. And building all of them, moving forward and building all of them simultaneously cashes in on that for everyone involved. Staggering based on several factors is another thing that we have to plan for logistically. And that is something that we've talked about, a mid-year change. What does that look like to elementary, to the intermediate building, to middle school? And what are some options in handling that or planning ahead? So that we minimize the impact of a mid-year change based on things we can plan for and even things we can't, and kind of maximize the timing of the change for all. So although it might not appear that a mid-year change for intermediate is in anyone's best interest, it could be a lot more manageable for the middle building if we plan ahead. So we've already talked through some of those scenarios.
Let me maybe clarify my previous comments, because I think they might be being misconstrued or misinterpreted. When I say staggered versus delay, right, I don't like the using it. It's just a play on words. I don't like the word delay at all. It just has more of a negative feel to it than staggered. When I say staggered, I'm saying whether you stagger putting a shovel in the ground by a year or not, it's staggered. Just again, I don't like the connotation of the word delay. when I say staggered, I'm not saying build them at the same time and just open them separately. If you're going to open them separately, then start them separately. If you're going to stagger the opening, then stagger the construction.
One of the-
Oh, go ahead.
One
Well,
of
wait,
the-
Dr. Diller had a question there
Well,
first.
I was talking to an individual that said, with the 3 schools, when you have your contractors and they bid, and sometimes they don't get the bid on the first school. And so if they're not staggered, you often can get a better price when the next people bid on the next school, and it may be lowered because they didn't get it on the first one. When you do it all 3 at the same time, you don't get that value. And I don't know enough about that, but what they were telling me sounded
And you're
right.
accurate. We would bid them separate no matter what, the 2 big projects. The question is building them together, not bidding them together. So they'll be bid separately, 3 months apart. So let me go back.
So 3 months is long enough to get that savings?
That was their it's not the savings so much, it's just they'll sharpen their pencils if they don't get the first bid.
Yeah, that's what
Yes.
we've got to make sure
Yes.
we have the adequate amount of time so so those contractors are sharpening their pencils
Yep.
and giving us better pricing.
Yep.
And I also think that the Green Village campus, that has to be the first priority because of the major restructuring, because you still have your middle school sitting there. If you have to delay it a year or whatever, they're still, you can still run them adequately. But all the changes that have to be happening with the kindergartners and the parents and all that, there's a lot it's a lot to go into, so.
Mrs. Garber, you were next, I think.
When you're talking about the McKinley Street, Stauffer Avenue location, we're not only building, but we're demolishing. Will that not end up being advisable to have this stagger where the new building is finished probably at about the same time as the Green Village, but the campus is not ready to utilize? And so would that end up not likely kind of balancing?
I'm going to ask Matt to jump in there on a little bit on the phasing, on the discussions we've had already on that, whether it's feasible or not, or maybe.
Yeah, and just to start off with the staggered opening, I want to be very transparent. Logistically, this is going to be a challenge for our B&G team, whatever decision is made moving forward, and will likely require the services of a third-party moving company for us to accomplish this. But I think when you start looking at construction schedules, the staggered approach is probably going to work itself out a little bit through the construction process. If you think about the 2 projects at Green Village, the one is a very large intermediate school, 348,000 square feet currently, and then you have a smaller elementary school. Naturally, the elementary school is likely going to move quicker during the construction period. It's going to take less time and would be able to be available for occupancy prior to the intermediate school. You start thinking about the middle school project, so we really have a phasing plan, high-level phasing plan developed for that project, because as you talked, logistically, we really need to start that project prior to a summer, because we need fill from the existing site in order to prepare the building pad, because it's a low area of the project. So we really need that first summer to put temporary parking in and get the fill cut for the building pad. But then we also have the logistic on the back end of it, where we have to occupy the new building and demolish the school. And again, we really need a summer to do that, because we've got to demolish the existing school, and then we got to finish all the site work so that we can get buses and transportation and student drop-off ready. So logistically, the priority there is getting that building raised up out of the ground. We would likely be looking at a very end of school year occupancy for the middle school. So again, I kind of danced around there a little bit. Did I answer your questions, or did I miss out what you're asking on?
Moving parts.
Yeah.
I have a quick question. So the third-party moving, is that part of our soft cost estimate?
At this point, we didn't even get into that because we didn't make the decision to go down and get estimates. It could be depending on how much we use in contingency and some of those. Yeah, the worry of demoing south and being open that fall is a worry. And we have the same worry at Green Village that we can pull off the build in 2 years with the variables of the HOP. So they each have equable variables of problems. That's back to my analogy in the beginning. We can have a great first half of the build, but it doesn't come in so great in the second half. So those are variables, we can't predict on move-in day.
Have you considered, and I don't know number-wise, but when sixth grade is no longer at Cams North, is it possible, okay, you already have talked about that.
We have.
Is it possible to vacate Cams South to Cams North and do something logistically that way?
Go ahead.
Okay. I assumed that you probably had already.
So the fun part of this is to play the what-if game during a lot of meetings when we look at the timeline of things. So we have considered, in the event that one project moves faster than the other, based on we can play all the time, let's plan for, and Matt's correct. We have all of these talked through potential timelines, but what if we get to a point where one project really shifts in front of the other? What are some contingency backup plans that we can activate before we get 2 months out from opening the buildings to plan ahead? And that could be potentially 2 grade levels remain in one building. The third prepares to move paired with where we have room. They start building their academic teams and kind of launch some of that planning and prep that we've already done behind the scenes in the next 2 years. And create as much consistency for that last year as possible, which avoids a mid-year move, which is stressful to everyone involved, builds consistency as much as possible prior to, and gives us even more time to communicate prior to that final move where both buildings, large buildings, would be open at the same time with kids and faculty inside. So we've played out that if south and north split and become a 7-8 building and a 6 building a year before, then we can coordinate the shift perhaps easier if the middle school is ready to go before the 4-6, and vice versa.
I had hold on, I was going to let Mr. Raber go, and then we'll go to you, Mr. Leonard.
Yeah, I was just curious, the public impact on the build simultaneous. I was thinking that would be higher than 2 bars. There's something very easy to understand about, hey, it's all happening at once.
Right.
So I understand the build all simultaneously, there's a cost advantage there, and there's an educational enhancement. The logistics is the real challenge. Is the logistics even possible? Could you come up with a plan that would work?
That was the essential question we started on, was, can we actually do this? And the answer?
Because maybe it's just figuring out a really good plan, and then it's not a 1, maybe it's a 2 or 3. It's going to be a headache no matter how you spin it, but.
Our team ended, after a long discussion, that they would rather rip off the Band-Aid and deal with change in one summer, if it was even possible, than it would be over 2 years. People get tired of change. We are very fortunate that we don't have to do a renovation while kids are in the building. This is probably I can't impress upon you enough, these are both brand new builds. While the site's disrupted at South, you're not disrupting learning to the degree when you do a renovation. So that's the fortunate side. So if we could pull it off, and certainly let's forecast to the fall, we'll have a draft transportation plan on whether we have 2 bus runs or 3 this fall. We will also have a rough estimate of what redistricting would look like this fall. If we start getting some of those righted and we feel comfortable about the change, then we're more comfortable about the logistics not being red. So, but we just started this conversation internally, so that's why they're red right now, but they could easily move as we start checking some boxes. So that's where we're struggling, rip the Band-Aid off or phase it over 2 years on the logistics only public impact side.
I think I kind of lean towards pushing forward in all of them, but then being ready to shift if needed. Right? Because that's kind of built in anyways. We might need to do that, even if we weren't looking at this slide tonight, that could happen, so.
I mean, there are variations after variations of buildings being allowed to be occupied. Let's say 6th grade could be occupied first, but while we build the other 4th and 5th. I'm not saying we do that, but you can certainly phase projects to do that where portions of the building become able to be occupied. We're not into that level of analysis. We wanted to keep it fairly simplistic for today.
Mr. Leonard?
Yeah, I had, I guess it's more of an observation than a question. And first I want to say, I like the concept up front. I like the concept, but it's a lot of moving parts. But I have a couple concerns, and it applies to both the costs through the budget area and as well as the logistics. Just there's I hear a lot of what ifs, okay? And I'm just wondering, for all these what ifs, if we have a contingency backup plan for, and I believe Ms. Cashdollar mentioned the what if. She took the words right out of my mouth, the what ifs. You know, you gotta listen, because, I mean, even the weather, you know, with the logistics, you know, something simple as the weather, you know, can throw things off schedule and stuff. So, there's so many moving parts, you know, it's like a domino effect. You know, one part's got to affect this part, that part's got to affect another part. I mean, it's a massive undertaking, and, you know, it's the planning for this. I'm sure you guys, you said you've been working on it for how long now, so. So, but the contingency, you know, I can't stress the importance of having, trying to think of everything that could go wrong, you know, plan for that. Very important. As you
I think on that contingency, Mr. Leonard's, and the what ifs, and I'm going to go back to this cash side. I am a strong proponent of holding the cash, not saying we're going to use some of the cash for the 300 million. And I have two bases for that. Basis number one is that is a big part of our potential what if piggy bank contingency for the contingencies. The other part is, and it is, you know, it'll be after these buildings are up and running, the next, you know, 100-ton gorilla that we have to lift is the capital projects that Mrs. Stauffer talked about. We can use cash then to help with that capital project
Risk
gap.
window 2, the second risk window.
Right. So that's where I've been mentioning this for a while, that, you know, I'm in favor at least, and again, if we say we're going to borrow 300 million, it's 4 years out. 1, 2, 5. Step 5 is 5 steps. We've already done step 1. So there's 4 more steps. You can adjust that down in 4 years from now, what we call step 5. And the other thing that you have, it might take a step 6. But again, I think that's the best. I think that's why I'm such a proponent of holding on to cash. Don't use cash. Mr. Leonard's a little earlier, you mentioned about when you came on the board, the issue we were in as a district, and, you know, Mrs. Stauffer mentioned 900,000. One of those issues was because the previous board, and this was previous to me.
I know where you're going with
2
that.
years before you, is they took cash and paid for Marion Elementary. And then we all sat here and were sweating pins and needles, and we had to, you know, budget freezes, moratoriums just to bridge the gap because we gave up our cash too soon.
So there's two things. You do have documents in front of you of the new borrowing scenarios, and you also have a breakdown of the project costs side by side. And so that's more for your perusal. We're big picture, but you have breakdowns there. So you can see contingency funds, soft costs, site construction. So you have a little more detail there. And again, not for tonight necessarily. Let me take you to the recommendation.
Can I ask another question about this chart, please? So I'm looking at the chart, and I see every yellow unit as being kind of a 1, And when I add them all up, Green Village Campus First has like 20 pluses and no negatives with a red.
Sure.
And I'm curious to know why the educational enhancement is just only a 2. With all those positives, you would think there'd be more coming out the other end, the outcome. And especially if, you know, we're saying one of our major priorities is reading by 3rd grade and math proficiency by 5th, that we're taking those kids now, we're bringing them into this great 4 through 6 environment, and wouldn't there be a better outcome than just 2?
I think what we didn't include and talk about the weighting of each one. They're not all equally weighted.
Okay.
So the cost and the educational certainly have higher value, but who has to deal with that? We have to deal with that. Who has to deal with logistics? That's the team around me. Now the staff change, again, that's us. Public impact is going to be all of us. So I wouldn't put equal numbers on everything. I think it's for a visual representation of what we're facing.
Okay.
Is some of that maybe because it's a relative measurement on educational enhancement where we're not able to get to the new intermediate model as quickly? It's staggered a year because I'm not using that D word.
Right. So I'll end with the recommendation, then we can come back to the continued discussion, because I think this has been a good start, robust for us. So here's where we ended overall. So we would, in the upper left-hand corner, active radar, we're actively reviewing everything. We're going to proceed with the bid schedules as written, which is January for the Green Village project and March for the middle school for now, but we're going to actively monitor the risks. That's healthcare, special education, enrollment, charter expenses, state money, all of that we must monitor. But we'll get to January and we'll see what the bids are and we'll say yes or no in January. Across to the right, you maintain full flexibility then to approve or stagger the middle school project for the March approval, strictly on bid cost and the local economy and the state budget from 27-28. We have that decision at that time. That's the crux of the major decision. One of the projects is moving forward. At this point, the Green Village is planned to be the first project across the finish line at this point. The second part to the bottom would be at the end of the borrowing in 29 or 30, we would use 20 million in debt service cash, not capital funds, not reserve accounts, not on all the other accounts. The money we've been putting aside, we could use to reduce the borrow. You don't have to. Things could be going very well. But at this point, that reduces the risk a little more to be more acceptable by saying at least we're going to allocate 20 million of debt service cash that we've been ramping up. The second would be to take the same debt service cash and move it to the second risk window and take your 16 million in risk funding and move it to 36. So Matt's plan is fully funded for the second risk window. You essentially eliminate the second risk window on the capital side. And so that's where we ended. And I am not 100% saying this has to be the plan. This is where we ended with a recommendation to get you all thinking to agree, disagree, alter, or adjust.
And Chris, I'll add, this was a conversation you and I had earlier today. The other part with the second risk window, you know, and again, it's the conservative budgeting approach. You know, we can always build capital reserve the old-fashioned way from what we save. Any additional savings we have, which are not factored in
Not
at this
budgeted.
point. The other thing, you know, again, the old-fashioned way, historically we've done larger capital reserve and we've rolled it into a smaller debt service. You can always do another borrowing where you roll maybe 3 years worth of capital projects into another borrowing, say, I'll call it in, you know, year 6, 7, or 8. So there's always a thing there. Again, I am a big fan of not utilizing $20 million to reduce the borrowing. I'm a big fan of announcing to the public that we're going to borrow the $300 million, and then hopefully we can borrow less without jeopardizing our cash.
So how are you building up the debt service account?
Yeah.
So there's a couple of factors that went into that, Mr. Leonard's. When we came out of the 24-25 fiscal year, even though we were forecasting initially a deficit spend, which unfortunately, because we have a lot of openings, attritional openings, we often look and see that we have, like, even with this budget that you're going to approve tonight, there's a slight deficit. More than likely, that deficit will turn around because we don't have people all year, every year. So we came out of the COVID years with some surpluses. That was one of the big helpful things in terms of we didn't spend what we forecasted we were going to spend, and we also collected more earned income tax because the economy, unlike what I'm going to call them the economic experts predicted, did not fall off like it was supposed to. So we started to move money out of like the fund balance, the general fund balance, and into debt service. So we were able to start to build it up. We also took, in that 24-25 school year, we did not put into the budget what the governor said he was going to give us, because it was an additional $8 million. And I was like, oh yeah, I'm not comfortable with that, because if we don't get it, then we're going to have an $8 million deficit. So as a result of that, at the end of that year, we were able to take the money that the state did give us and move it into debt service. We used it for some other things as well. We did some staffing, things in that nature. And like I said, we've made a commitment to superfund the debt service line for the last several years, so that we are putting, I think the last 2 years, we've done an additional $2 million each year. That money doesn't get spent, and it goes into the debt service fund. It's similar to like a capital reserve fund, if that makes sense. It's just a separate bucket that we are legally allowed to have under school code.
So is it it seems like it's similar to a pseudo fund account balance.
Yeah.
It is. It actually.
It was designed just for this.
Right. We could have left it in our assigned fund balance. I feel that, and Danette and I talked through this, that having it in the debt service, because we did start talking about these projects back in 24, 25, made sense because it's in debt service. You can't get it out of debt service.
Right.
I can use it to offset the debt service, but it's not going to go for some other operational expense. And again, I think it's critical for us to remember that for school districts, getting that debt service line in the general fund budget is what we have to do. Otherwise, we will get upside down. Like, I need to build it. If we're going to borrow, to Mr. Norcross's point, the total, and we're going to get to a $31 million, $32 million line, we need to build it up. I can't do that jump in 1 year. It's too much of a swing. So we've been focusing on building that up over the last
Currently,
several
we're
years.
around 22 million at the end of next year's budget.
In 26, 27, we have $22.6 million budgeted, and I think our debt service is around 13.7.
There was one other question, kind of. The PSERS, is that leveled off, or is that still increasing?
It has, believe it or not. It's still increasing slightly, but it has flatlined. I think next year, Danette, I'm looking at her and she can't see me, but around 34%. So it's gone up in the last few years, but it's very small percentage increases. So unlike when you were here before and we were seeing those great big jumps, we're not seeing that now.
Oh, well, that's a good thing.
Yeah.
And just remember, in Tammy's 3-year budget, it was status quo planning is what we focused this presentation on. It wasn't the optimistic side, or it wasn't the doom and gloom. We found that status quo. So as each item becomes recognizable for the future, it's a better position for us.
I want to know, I'm a little suspicious about any savings that we might accrue through efficiencies or effectiveness, we use those words, that they're going to be eaten up by just the inflated cost of goods and services, because our 2.5% tax increase is not covering the 3.3% inflation rate generally. I'm not saying we need to, jack up our tax rate, but I'm thinking that the savings are really not going to materialize to the point where we can really,
Yeah, it's more of a cost avoidance that your salary and benefits are not going up as fast. So yeah, you might see a reduction for it, but it just doesn't creep as fast. Same thing with healthcare. When you have interventions, you don't just immediately save $2 million. It's just stopping it from going up 18 and 20% like the last 3 years.
Okay.
It's slowing the bleed down, yeah. Yep.
Is there any districts or whatever that have gone through something similar as us to know whether we build both the one, I'm just
So-
wondering, I mean, that's, kind of
We just concluded our construction management services interviews, and we certainly are exploring other projects. We have never used construction management services to this degree. I will say this, it's the largest project in the state. People are bidding aggressively for our work. Because it's a large volume project, there are people coming out of the woodwork asking a lot of questions. So Matt, I don't know if you want to talk about a few of the examples that are like us from the CM examples during the interviews.
Yeah, I would say currently the largest construction projects going on in the state that are similar to us would be the Cumberland Valley School District. They are doing, I was on the phone with their facilities director last week. They are doing about $200 million worth of projects currently, you know, on existing campuses around you know, keeping the campus operational with building new buildings. So very, very similar in nature to us. And they have some logistics up there that we don't have, like they're all on one campus. They have the Carlisle Pike, and they just built a Costco across the street, and they've got all kinds of state activities going on at their facilities. So while it's a challenge, they said it is very manageable. Again, you know, the risk with waiting, with any waiting, is construction inflation and what that does.
Carlisle is moving a little bit. They're a little bit ahead of us. They're doing an intermediate school as well. So they're wrestling with some of the redistricting. I'm not as intimate with their project, but it is a significant project.
Are they both qualified for adequacy funding as well? I would imagine.
Cumberland Valley, no. Cumberland Valley, no, but
Right.
Carlisle, I believe so, yes.
Revenue from real estate sale?
Yeah, if you go back to the slide, calculate risk window 2 at the bottom in the fine print. I did indicate the sale and or lease of vacated buildings will assist in adding revenue to capital.
Good point.
Yep. Yep.
That's an area that I wanted to comment on. I think as board members, we each need to be thinking ahead to that potential vacating of buildings and get our thoughts organized as to what we think individually could or should be done. One of the comments that Chris made that I wanted to highlight was he mentioned that criticism was welcomed. In my professional life, I used to try to use the word constructive guidance instead of criticism because...
Critique.
Well, even critique, but constructive guidance was what I was taught to use instead of those words that have a more negative connotation. And as a matter of fact, recently I saw a comment that I thought was applicable. It said, criticism is often interpreted as a personal attack. And the result is that legitimate concerns are rarely addressed. Individuals who recognize the need for change are sometimes punished for speaking up, resulting in silence. And I think that we need to be careful that we don't look at our meetings, our discussions as criticism of anyone, but rather brainstorming. There's a big difference between brainstorming, where you throw out ideas and maybe one of them's a good idea. I know personally many times I have ideas that from one day to the next change because I hear somebody else's thoughts and it changes how I view the situation that I thought I understood before. And so, as I say, I just find that often people are what I often refer to as thin-skinned when there's anything that isn't exactly the way they think it ought to be. And I think that we, as a board, need to be careful not to be that way, because there's a lot of things that are going to need to be decided. And when I think back to historically the big things that have put us to where we are, just having that purchase in 2005 or whenever it was at Green Village has allowed us to have the property that we now can use. And so we need to look at the reality that whether it be the 1% increase that went to the capital reserve type of thing, whether it be the purchase of that land, whatever, there have been decisions made by past boards that have set us up for the position that we're in, and we need to be setting up future boards for a similar positive outlook and so on. And so I just encourage people to use brainstorming rather than criticism, and share your ideas, because ideas are what makes somebody else think of a new idea.
That's a great point, Mrs. Goldman. I think one thing that this board has done, not with this borrowing, but with some previous borrowings, and it's something, Mr. Leonard, you probably used to hear me get on my high horse about before, and that's this notion of wraparound financing or deferred payments. And we have been using level financing, level borrowings, and that's a big thing. I mean, you talk about the high school, you know, where so much of that has been deferred, and I think that's a big boost, and future boards are going to see this when this debt service drops off, because previously, if you would continue to do wraparound financing, it looks like you never drop off your debt service, but you're just deferring it.
On the comments, I wouldn't be taking a risk if I didn't say if factors outside of our control, as a result of Green Village, Alloy Creek was Littlestown, sorry. At the Green Village property, let's say can't get off the ground first, and the middle school's ready to go. If we came to you and said, the middle school's ready to go, we're gonna flip-flop the time frame by 6 months, are we okay to stagger that way? I'm not saying that's the plan, I'm just saying that's could happen. We have a lot of variables at the Green Village that might not get us across that finish line fast enough with controls outside of our control, whether it's the occupancy permit. It's just something we've talked about, and we went through this scenario multiple times, and I don't want to not prepare you for that potential. Again, it's not the predetermined thought plan, but it could happen. So you would give us feedback on, would we go first with the middle school and stagger the second one? So it's the what if. And so we're prepared for those. That comes with a different set of issues.
Chris, I think I would use your opening to also elaborate on that, where, you know, this is going to change monthly. And by bidding the Green Village project first, you know, that $25 a square foot potential, you know, that can easily be 10, 12 million benefit. You know, so that makes the decision for the next bid easier. Or so I think that's the other approach. That's the other. I'm a fan. I say to my professional and my personal options, by staggering at least the bids, it provides you the opportunity to either stagger more or accelerate as we go. The other part with staggering the bid, right? Hopefully we have a little more clarity on HOP permitting, township, you know, township what ifs.
Approvals.
So it can paint a clearer picture. Unfortunately, it could paint a foggier picture too.
Yeah. And that's why this plan is as of June today. We will know more each month that goes by. But this is where we are as of now. This is our thought process moving forward, but the group still has decisions to make. So we're not all in yet as far as the borrowing, as far as the accepting of bids, but we're working our way to that time frame.
But are we pretty, do you want a consensus? Are you looking for any consensus from the board tonight, at least in maybe two aspects? The bid sequence, you know, and the
Funding.
max borrowing.
There you go.
Is that?
Yeah, I think
Or
we
are we
just,
too premature for that
I
tonight?
think we're a little premature. Just the nod that we're heading in the right direction with the information you're receiving. Again, we haven't made a final decision, but we're heading in that direction. I think that's the biggest thing we need. I'm looking to my team. Is there anything else you would want clarity tonight that I'm not thinking of? Because I'm in the seat, so it's harder when you're presenting to think of those questions. I think this one. I've said this from day one when we were presenting with the forums. It is not if we're going to do the projects, it's just when. So if we're in agreement that we're doing these projects, it's just a matter of how fast and when. That's a big step for us. Then we know we're continuing the process, whether it's staggered or not. That would be a huge step for us.
I thank you and your team for how you're working and then the information you always provide us. That's so tremendous, and I appreciate it so much.
Good.
Well, and I've heard from the community that they appreciate the communication with them that you've been providing right along, and I think that's been a very important aspect of not having significant community objection because they've been hearing if they chose to hear. Now, there's some people who don't choose to hear what's available to be heard, but there's really no reason for people to say, well, I didn't know.
Right.
Yeah, but
I'd keep.
I run into people all the time that, like, they just got it from under a rock today, and it's like, when did this happen? Or Chris, I heard this the other day. Chris Bigger said it wasn't going to cost us anything for these new schools. Okay. Where on earth did you hear that? So, despite the fact that I can't imagine how many times you've been out there and forums and communicating left and right, there's still a large portion of this community that just is not caught on yet. I don't know how to fix that.
Go ahead,
Mr. Raber.
I was just like, keep the gas pedal on both, and I'm open to either one, potentially being staggered ahead of the other, depending on how it pans out. And I really am curious to know, could we troubleshoot the logistics more of that simultaneous open? If that's a lot more feasible, I lean that direction from a cost standpoint and an educational standpoint.
Okay. I think the message that I continue to get and receive is if we can continue these projects and stay under historical average tax increases locally, it's a win-win across the board. And so far, we've been able to do that. And if we can maintain that, I think that's the win-win when it comes to the local funding side that you're continuing to hear.
Yeah, along with what Carl said, I would say from day one, whether it's you showed up and you went out there and started talking about what's going on, you didn't mince any words about all the warts that were out there at the same time. And it's the same thing here. I mean, transparency is so important, and I think you're achieving that. And we can then go out and tell the public that we meet, this is what's happening, because it's the real truth. So thank you for that.
I tend to go along with Ben as far as with the 4 bars on cost and educational enhancement for simultaneous. I know Matt would probably have some heartburn about that, but the savings you would have not delaying that other one for a year, you could buy a lot of moving services and things like that. So I would kind of go in that direction.
Well, you can always do what they did back in the mid-'50s whenever Central moved to Cassius. The students carried the library books from 3rd Street to 7th Street. My sisters talk about it, yes. And actually, I did see pictures of it in the yearbooks whenever I was looking at yearbooks a few months ago.
Yeah, but they didn't have to carry their cell phone in 1950.
Just a thought.
Before we get too far off topic here, and I want to just kind of hitchhike on one of Mr. Haydick's points here about the communication, and I've received some criticism, false criticism, that I'm going to push back on tonight. In my president's report for probably at least 2 years now, I've always made a point to mention something with schools of distinction, whether that be financing, whether that be building projects, whether that be realignment, and it's been misconstrued as my criticism to the projects. And that is anything far from the truth. Public has said, I shouldn't be saying that. I'm raising fear. I'm doing it for information. It's not fear. And those who want to criticize me, I'll take it all day long. What I would like to thank, who I would like to thank, is the board. Hey, Mr. McKee, hold on a minute, buddy. What I would like to thank is the board here. One of my private conversations with Chris over the past year has been a concern with, as we've had architect presentations, as we've had finance presentations, there's never really been a lot of a discussion with the board. I'm thinking like, holy cow, what's going on here? We'll talk for 30 minutes on some other topic, but when we're talking about borrowing $200+ million, there's like maybe one question. And actually, we were criticized, I think just last month or 2 months ago, for even having this meeting and discussing this project, that this was a bad thing to have a board discussion and let the public hear what we were thinking. I applaud the board. I think this has been the best discussion and that I think the board has had on schools of distinction since Chris rolled it out 2 years ago. So I just want to thank the board for your input, and we will keep it up. Okay. Item 4.01, members of the audience are invited to comment on agenda items. No one signed in, but that's okay. We'll let you speak if you'd like to speak. Any members of the audience would like to speak on agenda items? Mrs. Jordan.
Here's what I'd love to know. 2.5 years this project's been going on, and all the professional work, hour-wise, which has gone into it. It has to be thousands of hours. So there's no going back. And Mr. Norcross, I don't think anyone was criticizing you. I did not see it on social media, which I'm on. So you can, not worry about that anymore. Really. But you do bring it up all the time. The other thing is, no micromanaging the school budget. It's the CFO and the superintendent, not board members. Mr. Norcross, you're a civil engineer. You're not an engineer that builds schools. Roads and bridges need to stop now. They don't apply to schools unless you're putting in a parking lot, which you will be. I will be coming to these meetings and watching, and I will watch the bill list. If I start seeing legal bills again, I'm not going to be a happy camper. Ideas have been given to you by professionals in this room. I've been coming now for 4 years, and it's because of Sherry Diller I've been coming, and you know that. So that's it, basically. The projects are going to happen for the good of all of us. Bringing up the past, the 1950s, I'm not going back there. I know what it was like in the 50s. Mr. Norcross doesn't. Thank you.
Other members of the audience. Yes, ma'am. Mrs. Dalloway.
I just want to say you guys are amazing. Everybody. I'm so proud of our school district, what you're doing, what you're willing to do, what you're willing to step out and do. It's incredible, and I'm very happy. So I just needed to say that.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Other members of the audience. Okay.
Put that in the minutes.
Parker is speechless, okay.
Parker said thank you.
Item 5.01, approval of 2026-2027 homestead farmstead exclusion resolution. Mrs. Stauffer.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Norcross. Just want to highlight a few things before the vote on this. We were able to increase the value of the homestead farmstead exclusion by $60.34 over the 25-26 amount. We were able to do this for a couple of reasons. One, you may recall from the audit presentation that we have money in a committed fund balance that is earmarked and has to be used legally for future taxpayer relief. So we've committed $1.2 million of that fund balance towards this exclusion. And we also received a little bit more gaming money from the state of Pennsylvania, which is good news. And you can see the breakdown on there. The other thing that I wanted to mention, Mr. Bigger had asked me earlier today, and I said, I don't know, I'm going to have to figure this out. We do have a lot of properties in our school district that will receive, pretty much 100% of the exclusion covers their tax obligation. But also he wanted to know, what is the value of a home that would see a 0% tax increase, basically. And I calculated that out to be an implied market value of around $230,000. That home would see actually a 4-cent increase over their tax bill from last year. When we look at the average and the median property values in the Chambersburg area, our average is around $310,000. Those homeowners will see a $20.60 increase over last year. And then the median value is around $283,000. They will see a 13.76 cent increase on their tax bill.
Okay, motion and second to approve 2026-2027 homestead farmstead exclusion resolution.
Move to approve.
Second.
Motion by Mrs. Gogler, second by Dr. Diller. Questions, further discussions? Hearing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? Ayes have it and so moved. When we get to voting on this one, this will be a roll call, but approval of the 2026-2027 budget resolution. Mrs. Stauffer.
Yes, sorry, my microphone. Okay, is it working? Okay, yes, thank you. So our anticipated revenue for our 26-27 budget is forecasted at a little over $218 million. Our anticipated expenditures are just around $219 million. We are forecasting a slight deficit, and I do refer that as a slight deficit of just under $700,000. With this budget, we are looking at a 2.5% tax increase that will take our millage rate to 139.8793, and the administration does recommend the approval of the 26-27 budget as presented.
Thank you, Mrs. Stauffer. Motion and second to approve the 2026-2027 budget.
Move to approve.
Second.
Motion by Mrs. Gauss and second by Mr. Haydick. Questions, further discussions?
It was McKee.
It was Mr. McKee, I think.
Well, they pointed at each other, so
Yeah,
Oh, is that
I thought they were,
I know he was first.
I thought it was a game of rock,
I defer to
paper,
my
scissors.
younger
They were
brother.
Pointing at each other.
Whatever it takes.
One of the gentlemen to my right made the second.
I gave it to Mr. Baker.
Could be you.
Any questions or further discussion? Okay, hearing none, roll call, please, Mrs. Stauffer.
Dr. Diller?
Yes.
Ms. Gogler?
Yes.
Ms. Gauss?
Yes.
Mr. Hayduck?
Yes.
Mr. McKee?
Yes.
Mr. Norcross?
Yes.
Mr. Piper?
Yes.
Mr. Raybert?
No.
And Mr. Leonards?
Yes, yes.
Motion passes 8-1.
Okay. Item 8, this is our normal item on here. New business, board members, any items you want to discuss for future board meetings, committee of the whole, presentations? et cetera, et cetera.
Well, I have it.
Go ahead.
If anybody works at the high school or middle school, it's probably a bad idea. But I gotta at least throw it out there. When I was aware of what the cell phone situation was in high school, I thought that needed to change. And now that I'm aware of what the dress code situation is, I don't know how to change it, but something needs to be done. Because it, just like a cell phone, the attire of some students is a distraction from learning. They want to be noticed, and they are noticed. And I just think it's not going to happen like next year, but it needs to happen sometime, maybe gradually. But I'd like to begin a discussion on how that might occur and what the staff thinks about that idea.
Let's start with board members. Board members' thoughts on that. I'll give a little bit of a history lesson here. I can't go back to the 1950s, but you know, I've often said Dad was a history teacher, so I love you, Dad. But I don't know. As long as anything with the dress code doesn't go back to the way it was 13 years ago, because that was horrible in this boardroom, having to deal with that situation.
I'll build 2 more buildings before addressing dress code like that. I was here. I remember.
Yeah, you were sitting right there where Parker's sitting.
Yep, I was.
You're going to be a superintendent someday, Parker. Other board members, thoughts on, do you want to further this discussion, do it in?
Well, I did comment to someone recently after sitting in the hallway at the Career Tech Center and observing the students at the Career Tech Center walking down the hallway. I remember when students who were in the industrial arts, VOAG type of programs were kind of looked down on for the way they dressed. And looking at those Career Tech students, they dress very appropriately.
Trade appropriately.
Trade appropriate, and are an example, I think, to what we would want to see here at Cassius. I don't know how we get to that point, but it just really impressed me thinking back over the years of the negativity towards the that group of students at one time.
I think that we're going to have to start to think about it as the academies launch, because the workplace environment is going to not dictate, but influence how our students dress. So we have to start somewhere.
Good point.
Yeah, that is an excellent point, especially with talking about the academies and appropriate dress. But I fully agree. You know, I've observed it over the last couple of years, and I think it needs to be addressed. Never going back to what, you know, was many years ago, when they, you know, put on all those regulations on things. But I do think it's an issue. I do have. You know, with the cell phone policy, I don't know if the timing is right now, but you usually start this at the beginning of a school year, so that, you know, and you lay it out to the parents and the staff in plenty of time so that they, you know, I mean, I used to tell kids, well, you can wear that attire on the weekends. We just can't have it here at school during the week. But wear it in the evenings and the weekends. It's fashion. It looks like fashion, but here at school we have to wear a different attire.
And forgive me for excluding Mr. Nelson, because I understand even in elementary schools there are issues with dress code. Sorry to bring that back up again.
Okay. Other discussions, topics?
We need to, before the end of June, do our superintendent evaluations. I think, is this at each table or just?
Yep, each one has one, yep.
Okay, so we need to be considering how we're going to do that. Last year, I think we had a kind of a work session where we discussed how do you want to do it this year?
It's currently scheduled for executive session on the 26th, our next board meeting,
that
before or after.
Yeah.
You have to let me know if you need more time than just before.
I think that's a good choice.
I think we do it before, and then if we need after, I doubt if we do. But if we
Yeah,
do,
I
then
like
it's
that.
available to us.
So come with your self-evals, Phil. I have my self-evals in there, your evaluation, so that that meeting can happen. Great.
That was going to be my part of the information. Thank you, Mrs. Gogler. Meeting's adjourned.